รับเชิญในวันนี้นะครับคุณแอนดรูว์ สโลนนะครับประธานกลุ่มธุรกิจสกอตแลนด์ในประเทศไทยนะครับสวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีครับ
ผมสวัสดีนะครับคุณแอนดรูว์อยู่เมืองไทยมานาน How many years have you been here
26 years
26 years งั้นสัมภาษณ์เป็นภาษาไทยนิดหน่อยนะฮะวันนี้เราคุยเรื่องสกอตแลนด์งั้นสัมภาษณ์เป็นภาษาอังกฤษดีกว่า Let's talk in English because Scotland is an interesting case really I mean I was arguing in favor of staying with the UK. I like the Stay Together campaign by the government of David Cameron. So I was trying to understand really the sentiment of the Scottish of why they wanted to succeed. Which side were you on? Just my own curiosity.
I won't say which side is going on because I think it's irrelevant. Yeah, but I think I can explain the arguments on both sides. Yeah.
How different would Scotland have been had the result of the referendum come out to be a yes?
Well, you have to look at the process as well that they had to go through. If it had been a yes, there was going to be 18 months of negotiation of the terms of how to secede from the United Kingdom. Yeah, so this was one of the issues within the vote. Yeah, people had uncertainty, but Scotland itself is within the top 20 wealthiest nations in the world. And it has fantastic export potential, oil and gas, huge amounts of resources. So I think, like everything else, as it sort of people recognise them as an independent nation, they would have been it would be a very successful country in its own right. But like everything else, people have to adjust to the change of circumstances, and over these 18 months that would have happened as well. So Scotland, everyone, David Cameron, Alistair Downing, and of course Alex Salmond, all said Scotland would be very successful independently.
Oh, okay, so economic fundamentals were quite, ready.
Absolutely, yes. And I think this is why the referendum came up. But it was promised maybe 2 or 3 years ago by Alex Salmond within the SNP, which is the majority of the Scottish Parliament, that was part of his policy, part of his manifesto to do, which he delivered.
Would there have been uncertainties on the issues of the currency and the setting up of a new bureaucracy and pensions and so forth and debt owed to the UK government?
I think would there have been problems? I don't believe there would have been problems. That 18 months was to negotiate how to actually transfer that. Yeah, people would have received what they were committed to. Yeah, so I don't see it would have been an issue. It was an issue to the electorate because it was an uncertainty, but that certainty couldn't be promised as part of the manifesto because it had to be negotiated within the 18 months.
It would have happened afterwards.
I believe it would have happened. I think the currency union would have happened, but if it hadn't, we could have pegged to the pound sterling. We could have taken the Scottish pounds, which already exists. Yeah. Or we could have gone to EU or dollar or whatever. So business wouldn't have stopped. But I think over that period, that uncertainty scares some people. If you're a pensioner, if you haven't got your pension, you're in trouble. You'd have had your pension, but what would the value have been because the currency hadn't been settled? Yeah. So these uncertainties obviously pushed 71% of the electorate of the let's say pensionable age voted no, but the same amount of 16 to 18 years old voted yes.
Oh, okay.
So you can see there's actually quite a split, but I think we have to take the message of the whole referendum and say, number one, this is a fantastic democratic move, yeah, but also there's dissension within the UK establishment, political establishment, and there has to be change, and it's recognised, yeah, but they've got to push this forward a little bit faster.
So even though it's a no, because the results came out, not overwhelmingly no. We're talking about 50, just a little bit above 50%.
55% to 45.
Yeah, so it's almost a yes essentially. This forces the hand of the UK government to deliver on many of the previous promises about devolution, right?
Absolutely. They have to deliver on things like welfare, allowing Scotland to create more tax, manage the tax situation, manage their own spending. Yeah. So basically giving them, I think that the SNP are moving to a direction for sort of like home rule, yeah? But I think there's also, within the whole UK, there's going to be more of a federal push, so there's more local decisions, yeah? People see London as being like a separate country, effectively, in the south of England, yeah? Cornwall, they've been looking for a referendum to become independent as well. So they're going to have to sort of deal with this situation and give more powers regionally. Otherwise, it's not going to be a civil war, but there's going to be dissension, yeah? And there has to be a balance with the voters, because Labour, when they lose Scotland, if they'd lost Scotland, that was 44 seats they would have lost within Parliament, which meant Conservative would get the majority nearly every time. In fact, SNP now, from Scotland, will have more seats in Parliament than the Liberals, yeah, UKIP, etc. They'll be the third largest party in the UK, which is really unusual.
So the political impact of the referendum now is a change in policy, really, from London and how it treats Scotland. I mean, we're talking about
I think it treats Scotland, but I think the bigger picture is treats the whole of the UK. So I'd see that there's things like the House of Lords. There've been debates how to maybe not remove but adjust the situation there, and they have to look at regions within the UK, so they give them more power. I think that's what's going to happen.
Are we likely to see the resurfacing of the proposal to have a referendum again in the near future?
If they don't deliver on what they promised, absolutely. I think you'll see demonstrations like when we had with the poll tax, which is tested in Scotland. Yes, I'm not saying violence or anything like that, but there will be demonstrations if they don't deliver on their promises. Yeah? Because you find quite a lot of people, 68% of the English population wanted no, but that leaves quite a percentage within the English population who actually said Scotland can be on their own. Yeah, the north of England were actually supporting the yes vote. So this is what we hear. Yeah. So I think that they're going to have to deliver, and it's estimated each generation there seems to be a referendum. The referendum was for in 1979. Yeah, was for devolution. Then it was again in 1997, and actually came into place with the Scottish Parliament, yeah, and other devolved parliaments in the UK in 1999. So the next step was for independence. So I think people will be happy with more of a home rule. I think the general population, people are proud to be British, but also proud to be Scottish. Yeah? So it could go that way for devolution and independence if they don't deliver.
When you say home rule,
I think that would be. It wouldn't be independence, but there would be like defence and things like that would be run from Westminster, yeah? That kind of thing. So there'd be foreign policy from Westminster, but there'd be more, let's say, devolution max, as we call it, yeah? Within Scotland, where most of the tax revenues come in, how we spend it, what we spend in NHS, yeah, etc., and the general welfare state. These decisions would be done locally. More decisions, fisheries, negotiations, but that kind of thing.
When you look at the history of Scotland and its inclusion into the United Kingdom back in the year 1707, it's been more than 307 years. Do you think that there was a lack of an effort to integrate, basically England and Scotland, which in a way led to a moment like the referendum movement? I mean, in many other countries, you got wars in the past, including Thailand as well. But eventually, over hundreds and hundreds of years, you integrate and become one. And you don't see people trying to succeed in the way that Scotland wanted to succeed from the UK. Do you think something went wrong in the process of integrating all of these countries together into the United Kingdom?
Well, I think one thing has to be clear: this has nothing to do with Scottish people against English or Welsh or Northern Irish. It's nothing to do with that. It's to do with a political system and whether you're being heard, yeah, and on your principles, yeah. Like Scotland is a very Labour, say right of socialist sort of country, basically meaning the state should take care of the people, yeah. Of course, people have to work, etc. So it's quite a progressive state, yeah. I think the fact they didn't get that representation within the government, within the Westminster, that there's not enough. There's some differences in the culture. Scottish people are very, very, very proud I mean, you look at from Scotch whisky to the national dress, the national songs, etc. They're very, very proud people. And they just didn't feel they were getting the correct representation, and there were some threats to some of the fundamental things, like they felt that there was a threat to the NHS, etc. So this wasn't, there was independence, but I think you can see from the vote that with the people who voted no were probably people who were unsure, and they're probably quite happy to be British, but they still do want more devolved powers, as Wales do, as Northern Ireland as well also do. And this move now with England wanting to have their own parliament, where the Scots cannot vote. Just now Scotland can vote on any change of law in English law, but the English cannot vote any change of law in Scottish law. It's different legal systems. Now England, which I think most Scottish people would agree, should have their own English parliament for England, just as they have in Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland. So this is a move just now, but Labour are a bit scared about this because if that's separate and Scotland cannot vote in Westminster, once again these 44 seats they've got in Scotland cannot influence them in votes within English policy.
ครับคุณแอนดรูสโลนวันนี้นั่งคุยกับเราเกี่ยวกับผลของการทำประชามติในสกอตแลนด์ซึ่งถึงแม้ว่าเป็นการโหวตโนในรอบที่ผ่านมานะครับก็จะมีผลต่อนโยบายในอนาคตเป็นการส่งสัญญาณที่ชัดเจนไปถึงนโยบายของรัฐบาลของเดวิดแคมเมรอนในช่วงปีข้างหน้าได้ว่าจะทำอะไรที่จะทำให้ฝ่ายที่เรียกร้องความเป็นเอกราชนั้นพอใจนะครับในการที่จะให้อำนาจมากขึ้นกับประชาชนชาวสกอตแลนด์พักกันสักครู่ครับเดี๋ยวกลับมาคุยกับคุณแอนดรูกันต่อครับ
ครีมโนบุโฟมล้างหน้าสะอาดใสแบบธรรมชาติที่ผมขาดไม่ได้
ความรักความอบอุ่นเกิดได้ทุกเวลาเมื่อเป็นไข้ซาร่ายาน้ำบรรเทาปวดลดไข้สำหรับเด็กซาร่ามีตัวยาพาราเซตามอลปราศจากแอสไพรินแอลกอฮอล์และน้ำตาลซาร่ารสหอมหวานซาร่าอ่านคำเตือนในฉลากก่อนใช้ยา
สีสันความเป็นอยู่คู่ชีวิตจันทร์ถึงศุกร์เวลา 16:30 น.ถึง 17:00 น.ทาง Voice TV
Okay, Google, how's the weather?
It's 31 degrees and clear in Prachadabit.
How to make chocolate chip cookies.
How to make chocolate chip cookies.
เทคโนโลยีทำให้ชีวิตน่าสนใจขึ้นเยอะมาอัปเดตเทคโนโลยีสุดคูลกันในรายการคูลเทคทุกวันอาทิตย์ 20:30 น.ทาง Voice TV
ชีวิตที่ดีมาจากจุดเริ่มต้นที่ดี For Good Morning SA Asset AIS ชีวิตในแบบคุณ
คุยกับคุณแอนดรูสโลนกันต่อนะครับเรื่องของเราชาวสกอตแลนด์ portrayed in the movies, the Scottish portrayed in the movie. Yeah, Braveheart, and very passionate, very hot-blooded. I mean, Is this true, or is this just a ridiculous stereotype just to make movies interesting?
Well, I think there's always the poetic license of movies. I think if it's boring, nobody's going to watch it.
That's right.
But I think the people, Scottish people, are very, very, very proud. They're very sensitive on that. Their identity and their principles. They're very down-to-earth people. What they say, generally, they will do. Yeah. So I think there's an element of truth in that. Yes.
But I try to compare Scotland's case to other countries. But to be honest, it's difficult to compare because, and maybe not comparable, because Scottish people are quite wealthy. You know, GDP per capita, you guys have it.
254 billion, yeah.
Yeah, so in a way, you're not second-class citizens.
No.
You're not mistreated in a way that you're not represented in society. It's not that. So why can't you maintain that status that you have and remain within the UK? Because in the way, you know, all the policies that the Scottish people do have a problem, you know, and want more devolution and so forth. In a way, the way that it is now, your life isn't all that bad anyway, as far as.
Well, no, I don't think anybody turns around and says, let's stay with the status quo. Everyone wants to improve themselves. So the idea, which actually, with this referendum, probably be better to say, Scotland won whether we won or we lost. Right? We've got devolved powers, yeah, which the people voted for. Yeah, if they hadn't offered these devolved powers in the last 2 weeks of the campaign, with all three heads of party coming up making a last-minute promise without even consulting their backbenchers, so there's a big revolution within their parties. You know, it would have gone the other way. I think, yeah, because that influenced people that like we care. Yeah, so. Within the Scottish people, I think the whole situation, people have accepted the results.
Okay. Investors now can be certain about the future. You think the environment, the climate for investors is now more certain about the future? They don't have to worry about uncertainty?
From the investment point of view, no.
Okay.
Right? They don't really look at any uncertainties in Scotland or elsewhere. But there's an election coming up. There is change coming. But people have to look at that change as for the better for the UK. I'll explain why. If we go to a more federal system, more of a regional system, these different regions will be able to gather taxes, etc., themselves and spend on their society. But also they'll be competing for investment. Now, competition is healthy. Right? So the people within Scotland, yeah, or these regions will be able to compete. That's better for the investor. So they'll get more privileges, etc. So I think it's actually very healthy. And I think it's also good to see this progression rather than just staying with the status quo. So I think it's good for investors.
How much trade does Thailand have with Scotland?
It's not a main trading nation. Thai Bev is got 5 distilleries within the UK. We have retail business like Central through Walkers and things like that. Yeah? So it's not a major trading nation, but it is growing. What you'll also see within the Scottish nation, yeah, is that they will have a lot of consultants, yeah, within oil and gas, which is massive. Yeah? So the Scottish people are all over the world. Yeah? So when you say actually how much business direct from business to business, yeah, Thailand isn't the focus. Singapore is very big. It's within the top 10 trading nations with Scotland. Yeah? Simply because that's probably their headquarter hub. Yeah? Right. But it's growing. 99% of businesses in Scotland are SME.
What's going to happen to First Minister Alex Salmond now that he has resigned?
I think he'll still be involved in the background. I think in a way he was correct to make that move, to resign. Not because he did a bad job, but I think he did a very fantastic job. He's a very popular politician within politicians, even though there's all this arguing and debating that goes on. Yeah? He's very well respected. Nicola Sturgeon, she will take over, as we understand. Yeah? That's the plan anyway. And she will push for this home rule as opposed to independence. Right?
And
so
the party will remain popular in...
Yes, actually it's growing. It's growing now to be the 3rd largest political party in the UK, never mind Scotland. So because of this referendum.
Okay, so even if the referendum came out to be a no, the party continues to be the choice of these Scottish people.
Yeah, I think their adjustment in going for full independence, I think that's also attractive to the no voters as well, and that they're not trying to secede from the UK. Yeah, they're trying to get more decisions being made locally, and this is the issue. They want decisions to be made locally for the local economy, not for Westminster to decide that.
Yeah.
Because they feel that Westminster is out of touch with the rest of the UK.
Are there a lot of Scottish investors in Thailand? Is it a vibrant, growing?
There are people who work here for large companies, yes. As far as Scottish companies concerned, I wouldn't say there's many. Yeah.
You see the need to increase the ties between the two.
I think these ties will always be there. There's a respect between the Scottish people and the Thai people. There's a mutual respect. So I think that it will grow and grow and grow. But like everything else, a Scottish company will look at and say, okay, what can we get from Thailand? What benefit is it to them? Now, the oil and gas, there's key companies, and a lot of Scottish people, consultants, rig managers, etc., are Scottish. So the skill sets are Scotland's very, very high levels of skill sets.
All right. I would wonder what will happen if the United Kingdom as a whole votes to leave the European Union. You know, that's a question that's going to face a lot of British people coming up very soon. Scotland in general prefers the EU than some of the other more conservative leaning politicians in London. I mean, what will happen with that vote?
Good question. They'll have the referendum for staying or leaving EU in 2017.
Yeah.
That will be after the UK general election, which is coming up next year.
Okay.
Yeah? Scotland, yes, that was part of their manifesto. They were saying SNP that we'd go into EU. There was debate whether we'd get into it. I have no doubt we would have got into it, right? Because we are a major trading partner. But I think it's a very difficult one. There's many people who are against staying in the EU, and other people are for. One of the main issues is that UK, because they don't use the euro and don't use the Schengen visa, etc., they get a large rebate, right, from EU. And of course, Germany, France, etc., probably do not agree with that rebate, and there's debate whether that will continue. Yeah? And I think this is part of the reason Westminster is actually bringing this referendum to.
If Labour wins, and you got a new prime minister, does it mean that you won't have this referendum of staying or not staying within the EU?
I don't know. It comes down to Labour, how they actually put out their.
So it's gonna be. It's a bit early.
It doesn't look as if Labour's going to win if this new situation arises.
Because it's ironic that the UK as a whole is facing this question, while Scotland wanted to succeed and would have been able to make a decision on their own as to whether or not they would go or not go to the EU. But okay, but it's 2017. That's a big question that lies ahead.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll wait and see what happens. But hopefully we continue to have strong ties between Scotland and Thailand, whether or not Scotland is part or not part of the United Kingdom.
Yes, I hope so as
Okay.
well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
ขอบคุณครับคุณแอนดรูว์ สโลนนะครับพักกันสักครู่ครับเดี๋ยวกลับมานี่คือรายการ The Daily Dose ทาง Voice TV
รอยไทย ใครทำก็อร่อย